Thank you for tuning in. You're watching Burnham Podcast on YouTube or maybe on Rumble. You can also find it anywhere you listen to podcasts. So wherever you found it, know that you can find it other places too. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. So tonight's guest has been a Sunday school teacher, a youth pastor, a lead pastor, a music minister. He's been in just about every facet of ministry you can think of, including worldwide missions. We're talking to Mr. David Ogden in this episode. Welcome to Burnham Podcast. I'm your host, Danny Burnham. Okay, so what you guys don't know is that we just had a 3-minute dress rehearsal.
After the 40-minute conversation.
After the 40-minute conversation. But I'm still here with Mr. David Ogden. And we were getting into what it is that you do now.
Yeah.
What have you done before? You're in ministry. I guess we'll start there.
In ministry. And so I started off in ministry. I trusted the Lord at 15. Didn't grow up in church, but long story short, had a friend who was very aggressive with the gospel and basically kidnapped me and brought me to a crusade.
Okay.
And heard the gospel for the first time very clearly and was like, oh, that's me. I need to trust Jesus because I'm in trouble if I don't. So began in, then after that I discovered, or a friend of mine discovered I had a singing voice. And so that started music ministry. And so I was in that for years and years and years, including a couple places here in town. And then in 2009, the Lord began to turn my heart toward teaching and toward discipleship and then toward missions in a sense, because I understood with evangelism, missions is just evangelism somewhere else. Right. So that began to change, and then we ended up planting a church in 2010 where I did church planting with our Armurchie Bible Fellowship for almost 11 years. And then 2021, between COVID and burnout, we ended up closing the church. And for the last year and a half, I've been trying to figure out how to engage the unreached people group that we adopted in 2012.
So your church adopted these people, and then your church ended. Yeah. And you're still trying to maintain this relationship with, what's the name of the people group?
It's the Kahar people in northern India. There's about 9 million of the Kahar. So they're northern India and the border with India and Nepal, so southern Nepal in that area. And
I guess there's 1 billion people there, though, right? So
1.4 billion in India. It just passed China for the highest population.
Wow.
And with China's population policy, which was one child for a long time,
right,
they're never going to catch back up.
Yeah.
So India is the most populous place in the world. South Asia has 2 billion people. So 1 in every 3 or 4 people you're going to meet in the world is South Asian. So it's crazy.
I guess that's right.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, and you think about India, it was amazing about India is it's roughly half the size of the continental United States, and there's 4 times the population.
That's true. Well, and you think about, you said there were 9 million of
just this group. Yeah.
And I'm thinking, well, there's 9 million. Well, there's 9 million people in Georgia, right? And then, so you look at a larger landmass, or I guess not a larger landmass, but you can pack a bunch of people into a small place in a country with 1.5 billion people.
Well, there's one state in northern India called Uttar Pradesh, and there's 330 million people in that state.
Wow.
So if it were a country, it would be the 5th largest country by population, but it's just a state.
Wow.
And there is approximately 1 missionary for every 17 million Indian people.
That's not enough.
So it's not enough. So you take the population of Georgia and South Carolina and you put them together, and you got one guy that's trying to tell them all about Jesus.
Wow.
And there's no cultural influence to tell them about Jesus like we have here in the South.
Yeah. So
it's all foreign concept to them.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. You say, you're obviously not the first person to say unreached people group.
Yeah.
What does unreached mean?
Yeah. So there's different levels. There's reached, which means there's some Christian influence or church planting going on organically. There's unreached, which means that there's no really Christian work that's happening there among the people, no church planting. And then there's unreached and unengaged, which means not only are they unreached, but no one's even trying to reach them. And there are literally thousands of people groups that are unreached and unengaged.
So are we talking like are you going there to convert them from some other religion, or are they completely without any type of religion?
Yes, I know they're all very religious.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, South Asians are much more religious than you and I are.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, so every home has a mandir. So you have a shrine or a shelf where your different gods are, and so they pray every day. They give faithfully. They go to worship. They're very fervent in their belief. The only problem is that none of their 330 million gods can take them to heaven.
Who can keep up with 330 million?
I have a hard time keeping up with one.
I got the one, right? Yeah, that's all.
Now, true, he's the triune God, but at the same time, it's just one you got to keep up with. And 330 million gods. Yeah.
So you have to go in and convince them that yours is the one and true.
Is the true God. Yeah. The living God. The one that can actually save them. Because in Hindu religion, the teaching is that it's a reincarnation. So you be better, you be born into a different, better state, and then it never ends until you reach that final. So all Hindus are really looking for is for it to end, the cycle just to end, and it will never end until they find eternal life. And so. And one of the problems that we have in South Asia, I say we, the folks that work there regularly, routinely, is that in South Asia, if you say, will you follow Jesus, will you worship Jesus, most South Asians will go, sure, no problem, but they mean that they're going to add him to the list.
The 300 million.
The thing with Jesus is he says, I'm a jealous God, so you can't have other idols in me. It's either me or nothing. So.
Wow. So they're more than happy to just throw him into the pile.
They're more than happy, yeah. And some people would say, well, that's a conversion. We got,
it's not
scorecard.
a conversion.
We're so pragmatic about stuff here. It's like, it's all about numbers. And
we talked about that on Sunday here at our church, and the board that we have on the wall. We had this many in Sunday school. I'm like, that's
this much
great.
given. Yep.
I could give people cash to show up to church. We could have a bunch of people, and that'd be great. But what are we really doing?
Yeah.
You guys are really doing it.
Yeah. It's missions is something that every Christian is to be involved in. Global missions is the responsibility of the local church.
Right.
I mean, the problem is here in our culture in the South, especially, we're just culturally not geared toward going other places and doing other things because we like the way that we are. Mm-hmm. And we're real good at taking care of ourselves in our churches.
Yeah.
But reaching out to people who are different culturally, different linguistically, different in the way they live their lives is just not something that's comfortable for us. But that's why unreached people are unreached, because they're not easy to get to. It's expensive. They're not easy to reach, and there's no ongoing works there. So you have to start from scratch.
Yeah. So how did you find? Say their name again.
The Kahar people.
Kahar. How do you find the Kahar people?
How do we find them?
Yeah. Well, how did you settle on this is our
Oh, how do we, okay, sorry, yeah. So when our church we really felt convicted by the Lord that we ought to be doing something with global missions and reaching unreached people. Because there's hundreds of churches in this county. There's lots of people around here who have at least access to the gospel.
Right.
But there's billions of people that don't. So we were convinced that, hey, you got to be engaged. So we began to pray through and voted every week on a part of the world. So we just took the world, pick a continent. Okay. Asia. Okay. Pick a particular part of Asia. South Asia. Pick a particular part of South Asia. India. Okay. Northern India, Southern India. Northern India. Okay. What are some people groups that need to be adopted? And we prayed through this one, and we ended up with the Kahar people. So
that's awesome.
And at that time, there were 7.4 million, and now there's 9.2. So that's been 10, 11 years. So it's a daunting challenge.
Of course, we
had 12 church members when we adopted a 7 million person unreached people group.
Easy peasy, right?
Right. But if it were something we could do practically and with our own strength, God would be interested in it anyway.
Right.
So our God's bigger than the problem.
Yeah.
So
no, that's a great way to look at it when you think of 12 people. The whole world away, trying to reach 9 million people, and it's been done. Oh yeah, it's been done. It could happen. It just, you think about all the gaps that you have to bridge. You have to get across the ocean, first and foremost.
Oh yeah.
And then you got to go to where these people are, and they got a different language and culture, and you've got to get through all that to say, here's my Jesus.
Yeah. And then the chances are you're going to be rejected.
Yeah. But how does that process begin?
Yeah, so we reached out to some folks in our denomination who had some experience with this sort of thing. That's what they do. And they gave us some training, some cultural training to learn how South Asia people live and how their mindset is compared to ours and their culture. And so that helped us. And then they hooked us up with some folks in our organization that are living there and serving there. So whose names I won't mention. But so they said, these folks are working in that general area, and they had painstakingly gone from village to village to try to locate, is this a Kahar village? Is this not a Kahar village? What people group living here? So when we came over the first time in 2014, it was me and two other guys who'd never been outside the state of Georgia. It was a life-changing, and both of them fairly brand new believers. So it was like, here's the water hose, right? So the fire hose, really. And so we went over there and we were able to meet with some folks who were living there and working there with their family, and they were pointing us in the right direction. So
these Americans also?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So literally folks that, one of the folks we work with now is their families from Georgia. Another group that we're working with, their families from Georgia, from 20 minutes from our house.
Oh, okay.
And they're working in Nepal.
Yeah.
So it's nuts. So we went over there, and then literally the second day we were there, we were going in villages where no Westerner had ever gone.
Wow.
And so it's just this white dude, two white dudes walking in with one translator.
Yeah.
And it's so cool because South Asian culture is a culture of incredible hospitality. So they have a saying, the guest is your God. So they will welcome you into their home. They will feed you. They will give you chai, which I'm now addicted to. And so everybody in the village is like, come to my house, come to my house, come to my house. Tell us where you're from. Tell us what you believe, because they want to talk about spiritual stuff.
Yeah.
So it wasn't an issue of trying to bang on doors like it is here and get people to make you, let them listen to the gospel. You. And now they literally wanted to hear about Jesus and who he was and what he did. Wow. And it's like, well, this is great. And I think that was part of what got me hooked on India, because, as a pastor and somebody who's been in ministry for years and years and years here, you don't find people that are hungry to know stuff.
You don't. And to the extreme opposite, there are people who you could walk into that village somewhere else in the world and they would kill you.
Yeah.
Or at least give it a good shot.
Yeah. But it was an amazing experience. And so we went back, and I took my wife and my daughter in 2016, and that was a whole different experience because they weren't ready for the change in conditions to what they are used to, and stuff like that. So, and then 2018, my wife and I went back, and then 2021, I went back to Nepal to actually do some trekking, and was able to do some. Went on the Everest Base Camp trek.
I was going to say, you've been at least close to Everest.
I got really close.
Yeah.
We got all the way to Gorak Shep, which is the last village before base camp. It's 3 kilometers from base camp. You can see base camp from where we're at. And one of the guys we were with, who also is a pastor in Missouri, got high altitude cerebral edema, and his brain started swelling to the point where he couldn't see.
Oh no.
And he was in big trouble. So we had to give him oxygen and then literally put him on a donkey and send him back down the mountain. So we, who had already trekked all day to get up to Gorak Shep, had to turn around and trek all the way back down the mountain to get to lower elevation so that his haste would be better.
So is that all he needed, was to get back to lower elevation?
That's all I needed. Yeah. Get down a couple thousand feet in elevation.
But imagine your brain swelling and your buddies put you on a donkey, And you get high enough out there and that you can't be reached with a helicopter. Yeah, there's not enough air to keep the bird in the air, and then so
that was the last resort option to try to get a helicopter in there, but it would have been $20,000 US, and just put them on a donkey and send them south. So we hiked all day and all night to get back, and I was really bummed. It's like, man, I came all the way over here and I got within 3 kilometers of base camp.
He ruined it for us.
He ruined it.
This is hard.
Guy getting sick, unbelievable.
Yeah.
So I may do it again someday. Who knows?
How modern is that area?
It's not.
Yeah.
Well, let me put it this way. For South Asia, it's modern. So the base camp trek area, because 99% of the folks that live on that trail make their income from the trekkers. So a lot of them will go and open their shops during the trekking season and then come either back here or back somewhere else and live the rest of the year. But there's amenities all the way up. As a matter of fact, what's crazy is we had Wi-Fi. Well, not Wi-Fi. We had cell phone coverage 80% of the trek.
Oh, wow.
Up through the Himalayas, we had cell phone coverage. And I'm like, no cell towers. Where are we getting this from? My son says it's probably 5G boxes or something. But
probably.
I never saw any of those. So I didn't see some yaks.
Really well behind the, maybe they're on the yak.
Maybe they're on the
yak. And they just go around.
Yak mobile phone.
Yeah.
It's crazy. But yeah, it's, we ate well, and there's literally one road up to Mount Everest, and it's not a road, it's a horse trail.
Wow.
So everything that goes up from Lukla, which is where the airport is, which that's a fun experience flying in. It's the world's most dangerous airport. Literally, the runway is maybe half the length of the Rome runway. And so there's only special planes that can fly in. And when they take off, because they're taking off into the face of a mountain, there's a ramp at the end of the runway where it actually have to get air. So that was fun. But the only way to get anything from Lukla, which is where everything flies into, to Mount Everest is by yak or horse or donkey.
Wow.
Or porters. We saw folks just carrying big wooden doors, just 80-pound, 90-pound kids carrying 100-pound doors, and that's just what they do up and down the mountains. Man. It's crazy.
So you're not. What's the difference in your people and then the Sherpas? Because you're in the same neck of the woods there, right?
So there's in Nepal, and this is really true of northern India too. There's kind of three sections of Nepal. The first section is what everybody thinks about when they think of Nepal. It's the Himalayas. That's the mountain section.
Right.
And then they have what they call the hill country, which is for us, it'd be mountains, but it's 5,000, 6,000 feet. It's where Kathmandu would be. Yeah. And then they have what's called the Terai. So they have this lowland that is where all the jungle, like the Jungle Book was set in there. So they have all these jungles. We went to Chitwan, which is a national park, and they have rhinos and tigers and bears and all kinds of stuff there. And so that flat plain is the southern part of Nepal, and the northern part of India is just huge plain. So the Sherpas are different kind of culture.
Yeah.
From the folks in the south.
Oh gosh, yeah. They're a little more, I guess, touristy at this point. Like,
yeah, I mean they make their living literally taking folks up and down the mountain. Yeah.
But back to your people.
Yeah. Back to our people.
So, what was your first experience like over there?
It was amazing. Terrifying, of course.
Yeah.
It was Easter of 2014, and we went over, which is really cool. We woke up on Easter morning, and that's when we started going out. And they put us with a translator, a national guy there, and they literally said, "Okay, you're going to this village." And they broke us up, which was the worst thing because the other guys were terrified. I mean, I was scared, but they were really terrified because they hadn't mentally prepped the way that I had.
Yeah,
so I was all gung ho, and I just kind of made them come with me. And so they were novice Christians with a translator going into villages, and I was going to villages. So we literally hit, I think, 3 or 4 different villages each, and the reception was great everywhere that we went. The village elders would always invite us to come to their house and to talk to us because that's how the culture works. And then we had one guy in particular in this village said, "Thank you for coming. Whatever, we're not interested. We're not going to change from our God.
We have enough gods."
Yeah, no thanks.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, that's, if it's not for you, it's not for you. If the God didn't call on you to do it, it's,
right.
We're going to present it, and we'll let God save who He's going to save. So,
but you've never experienced any hostility or
no. The Christians who live there, not particularly in that part of India, but there are states in India where they have what's called anti-conversion laws. So you're not legally allowed to become a Christian if you're a Hindu or a Buddhist or Muslim, and you can't convert from one religion to another. The whole idea of that is there's a really heavy Hindu influence in the government right now, and they don't want people leaving that.
Now you can't convert to Hinduism, right?
You could adopt
Can
it.
you?
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't think you could because they felt like you were jumping in the middle of reincarnation and you had to have been there since, I don't know, maybe that was.
I think you can get in on it. Yeah. But it's not, wouldn't be for me.
I would not want to convert to Hinduism because that sounds.
I get tired enough just trying to be a Christian, and it's not that much work.
Yeah, but there's their works-based salvation though, right?
It is.
They're trying
100%.
to do the next good thing and improve their next life and finally make it.
Yeah. It is in reality what a lot of people think Christianity is. Yeah. Which it's not. But
do enough good to get yourself.
You do enough good, and you get a bag of candy at the end of it. So
man.
But so it's different, and the language is preliminarily Hindi that they speak, primarily Hindi. Sorry, but they do speak other languages, Bhojpuri and a few other languages. So I started picking up a little Hindi just to be able to communicate, and because my heart is with these people, I try to engage South Asians wherever I'm at. Like if I go to a store or see somebody in a market or whatever, I'll try to speak some Hindi to them just to see, hey, you want to have a conversation?
Nice to hear their own language.
It always blows people away. Yeah, it's always like when you speak to people in their heart language, it just does something like it just opens them up completely. So I'm like, that's a great tool for sharing the gospel because, people think, well, they always look at me weird, like sideways, like, why would a white dude from Georgia want to learn this language and come talk to me? It doesn't make any sense. And so when I get the chance, I explain to him, hey, this, I'm a believer, I'm a follower of Christ.
Pretty good why.
And this is why, because we want to share some hope with you that you may not have experienced before. So, and come to my house for chai, and we'll have chai.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we're all hooked on chai now. I'm going to go home and have some chai tonight. My wife loves it.
Oh, well, great.
Yeah,
great. We'll get together, have some chai and some Parley G cookies. You ever had Parley G's?
I don't think so.
No, it's big, dude. It's a big thing. So Parley G's, these little bitty, the British would call them biscuits. Little bitty, almost like shortbread cookies, and you dip them in the chai, and not too long because they will literally dissolve. Yeah. And then you just takes it to a whole another level. Yeah, I got some. I'll hook you up.
Okay, all right.
So I know where all the Indian stores are. So.
Yeah, okay. Go ahead and speak the language, right?
I do. That's a great place to practice. Yeah. So, and they know me, like the one in Chattanooga that I go to all the time. It's called Janta Market now. It used to be Patel Brothers. And they know me every time I come in. It's like, there's that dude again. So he's going to say something about the weather. And he's like, okay, whatever. But
it's in Hindi then. It's cool.
It's in Hindi. It's cool. I think it's cool.
Yeah.
But the thing is, I took a long time to figure out is not everybody, like that's not the first language. It's like there's 17 official languages in India. 17 official languaes. And then there's hundreds of other languages.
Little dialects and regional things.
Regional dialects and things like that. And so 90% of the people I run into, 85, 90% of the people I run into here are not from a primarily Hindi-speaking part of India. Like, ton of folks. And so I work in Calhoun. And so I run into people in Calhoun all the time. Ton of folks from Gujarat, which is a state on the west end of India, and they speak Gujarati. And most of them speak some Hindi too, because that's one of the main languages. But most of them aren't super fluent in Hindi, so it doesn't do me a lot of good to have those conversations. But I'd still try.
I was going to ask, how many of 17 official languages? How many languages does the average person speak over there?
You know what's funny? It's pretty much every South Asian I've met at least speaks 3. Yeah, at least. Like pretty much every Gujarati that I've met here speaks Gujarati, speaks Hindi, speaks English. There's a guy whose name's Deep. He works on 53. He works at his family owns a convenience store up there on 53. And he speaks, I think he said it was 7 or 9 languages.
Wow.
He's worked in Dubai. He's worked in different places. He's worked in Germany. And everywhere he goes, he learns a language. It's like, I guess once you learn a couple, you
learn how to learn a language.
Yeah, you learn how to learn it. Yeah. So, it's crazy.
I struggle with the one, and I know like
I'm not great at English, but
I know like 4 signs in American Sign Language, and that's about it.
But it's common, and in school in India they learn English and they learn Hindi and whatever. So the kids are obviously have an advantage right away because they've already learned how to learn those things, difficult things. And it's just, if you teach a kid really early, 2 languages, then that's going to be something that's just going to be normal for them.
So what's it like? You've shared the gospel, obviously English to English, but what's it like working through a translator?
It's weird because I have a tendency to, as you have figured out, just go on and on. And so having to say something and then stop, wait for them, and then looking at them going, what kind of response am I getting? I don't know. Yeah. So it's weird, but I'll tell you something really, really awesome that God did. So our first visit, the first person I met, it was a national person. His name is Sunil. And Sunil was one of our, he wasn't a translator because he didn't know English that well, but he went with us because he's learning. So Sunil, his last name is Kashyap. That is a Kahar surname. So the very first person in South Asia that I met was a Kahar believer. And I'm like, okay. And so he didn't even understand about he didn't understand about it. He knew his own people were lost and unengaged, but he didn't understand what a big deal that was. I'm like, yeah, God, that was God saying, okay, I'm already working. Jesus said, I'm always working. My Father's always working. And we forget that because we can't see it or because we're not part of it, that God isn't still doing stuff, because he certainly is.
Well, I don't know. People always look at that, I think, as the first obstacle. Obviously, logistics is what it is, but you're on the ground and you're there getting past the language barrier or the cultural barriers, and you go into a different part of the world. Am I supposed to take my shoes off when I go in the house, or do I bow, or what's the
what's the protocol here?
What's it like sorting through all that stuff?
Well, the answer is yes. You are supposed to take your shoes off, and our national folks that work there, they are real good about telling us, okay, this is how things are going to go, and this is what they're going to. And everywhere you go, they're going to feed you. Everywhere you're going to go, they're going to give you something to drink. And so you have to be hospitable. And Jesus, when he sends out the 70 or 72, depending on your translation, in Luke 10, he tells them, wherever something's offered to you, eat it. Find a house of peace, and that's all we're looking for is houses and people of peace. But one of the misnomers about missions is, especially in the West, is that we're going to go over and win 9 million people to Christ. And that's not how it works. That was my mindset in 2014 until I got there and I saw the enormity of the issue. There are 1 million villages in India, literally 1 million villages in India. You could go village to village and never get to all of them with the gospel.
There's not enough hours in the day.
There's not. There's not, or people that are willing to, like I said, one for every 17 million. So what you have to do is as the Lord saves people, you have to train them and equip them. Those are the people that are going to reach. The Kahar people. So what we're seeking for is a church planting movement where disciples are making disciples, planting churches, then they're sending out, and then they're sending out. And that's how you're going to reach 9 million people or 1.4 billion people with the gospel.
So you're not going over there looking to reach 9 million people. You're looking to reach 9. Who could reach 9? Who could reach 9?
One of the biggest things we do is we say 3 things you can do in missions. You can pray. Everybody can pray. You can give. Everybody can give. Or you can go. And sometimes you can do all 3. Like Hudson Taylor would say, we need somebody to hold the rope. I'm going to go, but I need somebody to hold the rope. So we need, and what we're doing in our group, the Kahar Advocacy Network, is we're trying to enlist churches and people to help understand their responsibility, understand the need. Because the biggest problem in the world is lostness. So it's not knowing Jesus. That's the biggest problem in the world. And then show them, hey, this is how you can fit in. If our church could adopt an unreached people group when we had 12 members, anybody's church can. It's a doable thing. So, and the thing is, God's not asking you to do the heavy lifting. He's already doing it. You just need to be involved. So.
Well, that's what we know and we can rely on, is that the result is not up to us. We don't get to decide who comes and who doesn't, and who's receptive and who's not. And it may not even be right now. Maybe you witness to somebody, and 10 years from now they come to faith, but it's not up to us. So that should embolden us to missions and evangelism and all those things.
Absolutely. Well, and it should. But one of the problems we have in our culture in the Bible Belt is that we have a very pragmatic approach to everything. And so we want to know how many people were saved, how many people were baptized, how many people, blah, 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 how much money was given, how many people attended the services or whatever. We want to know because it's all a measuring contest here. This is how we compare whether we're successful or not. Yeah. And that's not what God's economy is about at all.
No. Well, and we devalue eternity in that because we think this is the number of people we got to get. And as pastors, you think about how many people come down at the end of the service. And that's a measuring stick, right? Whether or not your sermon was effective.
Oh, man, don't even get me started about altar calls.
No, I know. We don't even do one. We don't have them at Rome Reformed Church. But you look at eternity and what eternity is and the fact that we're going to spend it in one place or the other. And if I can fly across the world and change that for one person.
For one person, it's worth it.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's
not just about a number we can put up on the board or a video that we can show when we go back to church. We reached all these people. Eternity will be different with this person because God used us in this, in this situation.
And that's the end. So that's the end goal that we're striving for. Revelation 7:9. We got people from every nation, tribe, tongue, and language standing before the throne, saying, "Worthy is the Lamb," and that's the goal. We know there's going to be people from South Asia. We know there's going to be people from Nepal. We know there's going to be people from India, from our people group, and from other people groups. There's going to be believers there because the Lord was faithful and because that's His plan from eternity past to save those people. We just get to be in on it. Like it's a bonus for us. Yeah. When Jesus said that the fields are ripe for harvest, that meant all the work had been done. We just need laborers to go and gather. Yeah. And that's all we're looking to do. So
right. So who are you associated with as you do this? Is this just your group of people that are?
Yeah. So in between planting churches and where we're at now, we're at Woodlawn now. I've been there for about almost a year now. I was like, well, God, what am I going to do? I'm not a pastor anymore, it was freeing, but it was also frustrating because I didn't have a pulpit. Yeah. I didn't have felt like I didn't have a voice anymore. And I'm like, well, let me just see if I can find other folks that are interested in being part of this. And so I founded what's called the Kahar Advocacy Network. And so what we're trying to do is, for me, and I told the association this last night, my heart is small and medium-sized churches that don't have, because the churches that have 1,000 people, 2,000 people, they're doing stuff, and that's fine. Yeah. They're sending teams and things like that. But there's churches that have 20, 30, 40, 50 people that don't even know there's a potential for them to be involved in global missions. They wouldn't know how to get on a plane. They wouldn't know who to talk to, who to contact, wouldn't know the protocol. And so my heart is to try to get these churches, to see every church in this county being involved in global missions, whether it's in India or anywhere else that God calls them to be, and serving faithfully, because it is the church's responsibility, is global missions. So.
And in those small and medium-sized churches, that's how we become effective in global missions as a church.
Absolutely.
Because Rome Reformed Church, there's 25, 30 of us on Sunday morning. There's only so much we can do in terms of global missions. But if we get together with 10 other churches who have 25 or 30 people, now we have 600 people that are chipped into this thing.
Yeah, we got 600 people praying. We got 600 people giving. And one of the things that we emphasize is, for Southern Baptists, they have something called the Lottie Moon offering. So it's every Christmas. It's a giving specifically for global missions and the International Mission Board and those folks who are already serving overseas. So what we tell people is, we're not asking you to give to us. We're not asking you to give us any money. We're asking you to give what you're already giving, but be more involved, like understand where that money's going and understand how you can help. Whether it's writing a letter, whether it's sending a care package. We had a family that we work with in India that we sent a care package to. We just asked them, hey, what do you guys need? And they sent us a list of Christmas stuff. So it's like, okay. I mean, simple things. The Cheez-Its, because the Cheez-Its there don't taste like the Cheez-Its in America. So, you know, so it was just, it's not a big deal, but for them, it's a big deal. Yeah. So for us to encourage the people who have literally sacrificed their lives to go where the biggest problem of lostness is what we want to do.
Well, it's interesting that you said sacrifice your life. When we think about the verse that says, greater love hath no man than to lay down his life for his friends. Yeah. That doesn't always mean dying, right?
Right.
Sometimes it means you pack up all your stuff or not, and you move to India and reach a unreached people group.
One of the things that God is working on me and teaching me right now is that the heart of Christianity is submission. And Jesus is not interested in your stuff. He's not after your pocketbook. He's not after your house. He's not after your TV. He's not after anything. He wants your heart. He wants your submission.
Yeah.
And when he has your submission and surrender, which Jesus demanded that, hey, unless you take up your cross and die to yourself and follow me, you cannot be your disciple.
Right.
My disciple. Unless you're willing to do that, then it doesn't matter how much you give. It doesn't matter anything. It doesn't matter if you get on a plane, if your heart's not belonging to Jesus. So it's just a matter of, will we submit? Will we surrender? That's part of the problem that we have here. The other problem that we have here, one of them is tribalism, big time. As a pastor, I used to be really bad about that. It's our stuff, our church. And you talk about partnerships, what if our church doesn't get the glory for it?
Ooh.
Well, what if our church doesn't see the benefit? What if we don't have a missionary come to our church? What if we can't say that we did this? What if it didn't show up in the newsletter?
Yeah.
That's, that takes something. It takes a surrender of your will and your pride to understand that the problem is bigger than you getting a result out of it. So,
well, it's not. We're not investing in advertisement when we think about cooperating on a thing like that. It's investing in the kingdom.
Yeah.
We want the glory, and we want our name to be on the sign out front, and we want all that good stuff.
Yeah.
But it's not what it's about, and God is going to take care of us. Because we did what we were supposed to do, not because we were looking for a particular reward from it.
Yeah, and I like what Zwingli said: preach the gospel, die, and be forgotten.
Yeah,
that is the Christian's duty and responsibility.
That's hard because we want to leave a legacy, right? And I want everybody to remember how I preached and how good it was. And
we all we want to be remembered, but the thing is, God remembers. Yeah, God knows.
Yeah,
and that's all that really matters. In 1,000 years, in 100 years, nobody's going to know who I was, what I did, where I went to church, what I served, how much money I made, what kind of car I drove. Nobody's going to know. No one's going to care.
Yeah.
But in 100 years, God is going to know.
Yeah.
And for eternity, God will know. And so those people will know.
Yeah. So even the least little bit.
Yeah.
Whatever you feel like you can do, and everybody, is not capable of giving $10,000 to IMB or whoever.
Yeah.
But you can give something. Mm-hmm. You can pray. Everybody can pray. Everybody can give a little bit, like you said. And
everybody can be involved.
Yeah.
And the thing is that everyone has to be involved. Like it is not an option for a Christian to be involved in missions, whether it's local, national, or global. Every Christian is a missionary. Now, as I said before, it's not a matter of whether God will call you to be a missionary. It's a matter of whether you'll be faithful to the call He's already given you. Because the Great Commission is for everybody. Yeah. And that's what missions is. Go, make disciples, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, and teaching them. So it's going, it is preaching the gospel, it is discipling, planting, lather, rinse, repeat. Yeah. And that's all missions is. It's pretty simple. And the other thing we have a problem with, Danny, is that there's a real misconception about what missions is, especially in our churches here. Because, boy, I got to be careful not to touch the third rail, but
that's what we do here. Bring it on.
Adrian Rogers famously said, I don't know if you know who that is, that God did not call us to make the earth a better place to go to hell from. Ooh. And so I know there are churches that are involved in going overseas, but they go to the same place every year. And they do, building projects are fine, feeding programs are fine, clinics are fine, but it doesn't matter if they have a house and clothes and food if they die without the gospel. Yeah. So all those things are great if they're accompanied by the preaching of the gospel, because that is the primary thing. If the gospel is not proclaimed, it's not missions. And that's tough to wrap our heads around because, hey, it's hard to share the gospel.
It is. It's tough.
It's hard to, I don't want to tell my neighbor about the gospel. Yeah. So why would I want to go across the world? It'd be better if I could just drop some money on the plate. It'd be better if I could just go and play basketball with them or something,
Well, that's our idea of a mission trip, right? We go over and we play soccer with the kids and we take a picture with them. Look at all the little kids around me in the village and they loved me. And Well, where was Jesus and all that? Like, did you bring him with you, and are they going to remember that after you're gone?
And what about the people outside of that village?
Yeah.
Because there's villages that, and I'm not knocking the efforts of any church, and I'm not going to name any specific works, but there's villages. I know one village that gets several churches from this area send teams routinely to that village. Every year they're sending teams. Same people, seeing the same folks, same village. They're doing a different building project or a different whatever project every time. And that's all well and good. But if you've got 100 people dying without the gospel, and put it this way, if you got 100 people drowning and you got 100 life preservers, but you keep throwing them all to one, then that leaves out the other ones.
Right.
So I know it's easy because we have a relationship with those people, and frontier missions where the gospel hasn't been preached is difficult. But if we love people and we care about people hearing the gospel, then we've got to get past our comfort zones and go.
Yeah.
The terrifying statistic is that 250,000 South Asians die every week. Every week.
At least, right? I mean, with so many billions down there.
Yeah.
Wow.
250,000, so 1 million a month, 99.5% of those without the gospel. That's on us.
Yeah.
That's not their fault. It's our fault.
Yeah.
Because we're too busy building our kingdoms, building our churches, padding our stats, justifying our salaries to do the things that God called us to do.
Yeah. I've changed recently. I got into a book several guys wrote. I found it's on the Logos software.
Okay.
It was the free book of the month, I guess, last month. But
that's good. Anything's free on that. It's expensive.
Right, yeah. It's like all I can get on there. But it's called Still Not Professionals, and it's talking about pastors.
Piper, yeah.
So they get into,
Piper,
how much more could your church do if you weren't paying your pastor $150,000 or whatever,
Ooh.
And,
you touched the third rail.
Right? That's what we do here. I don't make any money as a pastor. I have that license at this point.
Amen.
But yeah, but how much could we do if we weren't? And I'm rabbit trailing a little bit, but where's our focus, like, really?
Yeah.
There are plenty of pastors that have a job. They don't have 500 people in their church because that just becomes impossible. But but maybe you don't need 500 people in church. Maybe you need 5 churches with 100 people or less.
87% of money given by Christians goes to domestic ministries. That is paying the light bill, paying the pastor's salary. Yeah. Less than 0.5% goes to reaching unreached people of the money we. As a matter of fact, this was a terrible statistic, but it's also very enlightening. In the United States, we spent more money every year on Halloween costumes for our pets than we do on reaching unreached people.
What are we doing? What are we doing?
And it's great to have a building if you've got it and whatever, but do we need to build a $10 million building and give $5,000 to missions?
We do not. we do not. That's tough, man, because we want to have a nice place to go to church, right? And we need that new thing, whatever,
Well, like the guy, I'm in a missions cohort with a guy who's been doing this for years and years and years, and he says, we're real good at taking care of ourselves. Like we make sure that we make sure the lights are on, we make sure the chairs are comfortable, we make sure that the heat is on when it's 10 degrees outside. Taking care of the other people that we can't see, that we don't know, that aren't like us, they don't sound like us, they don't live like us, they don't vote like us.
Whoa,
man, that's where Jesus has to do something.
Yeah.
Because we don't want to.
It's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I don't want to, and I've got things pretty good where I'm at.
Yeah.
I don't want to go across the country or the world and, and be hot or cold or hungry or tired. Just stay here and I'll put money in the plate. Maybe.
Maybe. Yeah.
Church has turned into a consumer thing for us.
It totally, and especially here in the South, because again, we've got that tradition of it's Sunday, you have to go somewhere. So we are good. Most of our church growth, I would say, this is not a statistic that I know for sure, but I would say 80 to 90% of the church growth in our county is from folks that are other churches, and we get them to come to our churches.
Yeah, and we call it growth.
Yeah, it's really just swapping.
Yeah, they were at a different church last week. Yeah.
But think about it this way. When's the last time that someone came up to you and shared the good news about Jesus?
I don't remember the last time somebody approached me with the gospel.
Yeah.
And I don't wear like a shirt that
I think
says
I've
I'm a
had
pastor
one
or
time.
anything, but yeah, it's happened, but I couldn't tell you the last time.
So what does that tell you about other folks?
Oh, it ain't happening.
It ain't happening.
Man.
But Danny, it's so much easier to just make our churches as attractive as possible and try to get the lost to come in there.
Yeah.
But it's obviously not working.
Yeah. Yeah. Or it's not even, that's the, we got the whole wrong approach to church anyway.
Yeah.
Like, let me bring my lost friend to church so the preacher can get him
So
saved.
the preacher can get him saved.
No, I keep telling a lot of people, don't bring your lost friends to me. Like, share the gospel with them, and they're not going to understand any of this anyway.
Hey, that was such an evangelistic message. I'm like, okay, good. Now go share it with someone.
Go evangelize. Yeah.
That's the Great Commission begins with go.
Right.
And whether that's across the street or whether it's across the world, go is the operative word. You have to go to where the lost people are. I'm not the biggest fan of his theology, but Francis Chan has a really good illustration about fishing. That, you get these places where all the fish are biting and people know where the fish are. And so all the people gather in this one spot. But meanwhile, someone told you on the other side of the lake where no one was fishing, there was an abundance of fish. And if you just threw your hook in, your lure in, you're going to catch one every time.
Yeah.
You'd go and you'd sacrifice everything to go.
Yeah.
But that's how the rest of the world is, but we just don't understand it. So,
well, I learned, and I wore this shirt tonight, and it's not a
I was going to ask you about that.
I guess. It's a little town we went to in West Virginia and did some
Okay.
mission work. And this
Yeah.
is their Lumberjacks was their high school mascot there. But I remember being there.
Sweet mascot.
And it's pretty awesome. It's right in the middle of lumber country and coal country. Good
Yeah.
stuff. But I remember people asking us, like, do you have to go all the way to West Virginia to find mission work? And we're like, well, no, we don't have to. And I kind of thought about that, and,
Yeah.
all the way up there, and we get there, and we're doing the thing that we went there to do.
Yeah.
And this lady comes up and grabs me and my buddy by our shirt. She's got both of us, one in each hand, and she's like, you don't know what this means. Nobody comes here. And I thought, okay, that's why we came here. That's why. So maybe nobody grabs you by your shirt in northern India and says nobody comes here, but nobody goes there.
Nobody goes there.
We could go across the street, or we could put a snarky thing on the sign out front of the church, and maybe that'll bring them in. Probably not. But to go to a place where nobody's going, that's what's got to be done.
It's got to be done. It's got to be done. And it's got to be done for a lot of reasons, but mostly it's got to be done because, A, we love people. And if we really say we love people, then we got to be concerned about their souls.
Yeah.
Spurgeon said, if you have no wish for others to be saved, be sure of this, you're not saved yourself.
Ooh.
And Spurgeon was as reformed as you can be, and so am I, but he didn't know who the elect was, but he said, even if God had put a yellow stripe up the back of every one of the elect, I would just go around lifting up shirts, but I can't know who they are, so I just preach the gospel to everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we don't know who God's going to save, but he's going to save somebody.
Yeah.
I know that because he hasn't come back yet.
Right. Yeah. Still time.
There's still time.
Yeah.
There's still time. And I don't want to, I'm not a spring chicken anymore. I'm going to be 53 here in a couple months. And I know that might not seem old, but boy, 10 years ago, it seemed awful old.
Right.
Now it seems much younger.
Yeah.
But I don't want to be, 20, 30 years down the road and going, oh, I wish I'd done something more with the gospel.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I want my kids to see it. Like, I want my kids to catch it. And my daughter has totally absorbed it. And I want the next generation. I want my grandson to have a passion for unreached people. I want that to continue. I don't want my legacy to die.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's what we should want, and which is not the same as dying and being forgotten, and that's a different thing. But you're handing your example.
I want the work to keep going.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I want every one of those 9 million people, if they don't trust in Jesus, I want them to at least hear.
Yeah.
Because the greatest tragedy is not the people hearing the gospel and reject it. The greatest tragedy is that people don't even get to hear it.
Yeah.
And there's no chance.
Yeah.
Zero. You gotta at least give people a chance, a shot, right? So
we gotta get it out there, and it's not going to be fun or easy, and it's not always pictures with cute little kids in the village, but it's work, and I guess if it was easy, everybody would do it, but
it would. But it's going to take a culture shift among our churches, and I think God is doing that. I think it's going to happen. I don't think every church is going to jump on board with that, but I think I think the mindset is going to change, that certainly God will accomplish what he wants to accomplish.
Yeah.
But it's got to take a change in mindset from our churches where we're thinking about inward, and we change that to outward. And I've heard it preached a million times, but until we really think about folks outside the walls of our church, it's not going to change.
It's not. But you guys are doing your best to change it. What do you need?
$10 million and no more bills.
Be great, right? What can we do to help?
Actually, so we just need opportunities to talk to people. I'm really thankful for our association, because I went in and shared my heart with the director of missions at our association, Tim, and he was like, "Yeah, absolutely. Let's help that to happen." He formed a missions team, and we're reaching out to all the churches in our county to try to tell them, hey, you can be involved, and this is good for your church. It's not like we're trying to get more stuff out of you.
Right.
This is healthy for your church. When you
Sure.
reach unreached people with the gospel, you promote evangelism within your own church, and then you make missions the heart of your church, and that's when the church really is healthy.
Yeah.
We're also doing something I can plug in October. Our church is sponsoring what's called a Global Impact Conference, October 18th to 20th, and we're going to bring in missionaries from all over the world, missions organizations, literally from all over the world, bring them in, and we're going to try to have people meet up with them. I'm going to try to get people who aren't involved, aren't serving somewhere, whether it's in South Asia or anywhere,
Right.
and show them the opportunities that exist.
Yeah.
And plug them in, because ultimately I'd like every believer to be involved in missions, whether that's across the street or whether it's across the world.
Yeah.
So, because that's what
be.
we all should be.
Yeah.
Whether we like it or not, that's the call. God never saved anybody that he didn't apply the Great Commission to. It's not an option. And I think our churches, especially you talk about consumerism, especially in our culture, the consumeristic nature of our culture is that we think that, well, it's like a buffet. I'll take a little bit of tithing, and I'll take a little bit of, whatever, fellowship, and I'll take a lot of fried chicken, and I'll take, a little bit of preaching, and I don't necessarily want the Sunday school, and I'll skip the missions. Maybe I'll come back for that.
Right.
But for Christians, it's not an option. This is what, as Piper beautifully says, missions exist because worship doesn't. So we are called to be missionaries. Every Christian is called to be a missionary, and there's only one thing, Danny, that you can't do in heaven if you're a believer. Just one. We can eat in heaven. Praise the Lord for that.
Thank God.
We can worship in heaven. We can fellowship in heaven. We can have joy and see Jesus face to face. And we're going to do all of that stuff. But you're never going to be able to share the gospel in heaven because there won't be any lost people there. So while you're here, this is your opportunity.
We've got this window, right?
This is your window.
Yeah.
And I would hate to the end of my life think, man, I blew it.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest barriers to it is church stuff. Not that churches are bad. Churches are certainly God's calling of his people. But we get involved in church stuff and get busy with church things and forget the purpose that God made the church for. See, God didn't save the church and then give it a mission. He didn't save the people and say, okay, now what am I going to have them do?
Yeah. God
had the mission. The mission was the proclamation of his name and his glory throughout all of creation. He saved the church for that mission. So it's just, when we do missions as a church, it's just what God has already planned for us to do. So it should be normative.
It should be.
It should be.
Yeah. So what, you guys got a website, or how do we get in contact?
So actually, no, because of the nature of our work.
Oh yeah.
We can't really publicize who we're working with, or
I gotcha.
We do have a Facebook group. It's a private group. Anybody wants to join, I'll send you an invite as well.
Okay.
Just hit me up I'm on Facebook. They can find me on Facebook, or you can send me a email at david@woodlawnrome.com, and or David at pastor@abfchurch.net. I've still got that one, although ABF hasn't been around for years.
Yeah.
Or give me a holler, and they can find me, and I'll hook them up if they're interested in serving. If they just want to know more about the culture, if they want to know more about serving, if they want to get on a plane, we're trying to go in May, if the Lord wills. I'm still looking for a couple people to go with me if they want to go. And I can promise them a couple things. Number one, they won't be harassed or persecuted,
Right.
which is great. Which is why I don't understand why people don't share the gospel here, because the worst thing that's going to happen, somebody's going to say no. They're probably not going to get sick. We've never had anybody get sick while we're with this. Yeah. And they're not going to be the same when they come back, because when they see what God is doing, it's literally, Danny, if you went to India today, you would see the book of Acts playing out. Wow. It is literally playing out that way. It is amazing. The culture and everything. Like, you go into a village and it might as well be 2,000 years ago. It's nuts. But when you see the people and see the warmth of their hearts and see the receptiveness to at least hearing the gospel and entertaining the gospel,
yeah,
you're going to go, man, I just want to stay here and do this forever, So
good stuff, man. Well, I think we're going to jump off right there.
Okay, awesome.
But
did you record this time?
We did. We got it all. We feel good about it. Good. Yeah. Well, thank you for being
brother.
on.
Yeah.
We'll do it again sometime.
That sounds great.
All right. God bless you guys. We love you. See you next time.